Find all the solutions. So now we're going to find all the solutions of the equations, factor first, and then set each factor equal to 0. This is difference of squares. It's the same as x squared plus 3 times x squared minus 3 equals 0. And now you set each factor equal to 0. So x squared plus 3 equals 0. I'm going to solve that by subtracting 3. And then I get x squared equals negative 3. So then I square root that. And I'm left with x equals, remember when we square root we get a positive or negative answer. Remember when we square root a negative, an I comes out. And then the square root of 3 I can't break down anymore. So there's one answer. And then x squared minus 3 equals 0. I'm going to add 3. I get x squared equals 3. And then I square root that. So I get x equals, remember we get a positive and a negative answer, the square root of 3. And that's it. Those are my solutions. That's 4 solutions. Positive I roots of 3, a negative I roots of 3, a positive square root of 3, a negative square root of 3. Number 8, we cannot take a GCF out. No x, no constant. So we're going to just factor by grouping. So we get x squared, I'm factoring an x squared out of the first parentheses, in which case I'm left with an x plus 8. I'm going to factor a 6 out of this. 6 goes into 6x and 48. It's a positive 6 I'm factoring out. Leaves me with fx plus 8. And then we take this shared binomial that's in each factor and we factor that out. So we're left with x, we bring the x plus 8, and we factor it out, and then we're left with x squared plus 6 in there. And then we solve this, set each factor equal to 0. So x plus 8 equals 0. Well, that just means that x equals negative 8 when you actually solve for x. And then over here, x squared plus 6 equals 0. You subtract 6. You get x squared equals negative 6. Square root, you get x equals plus or minus I roots of 6. Beautiful. Notice we had a power of 3 and we have 3 solutions. One answer here, and then this plus or minus gives us a positive answer and a negative answer, so 2 answers. 1 plus 2 is 3. Alrighty, here. Before you can factor, make sure you set this equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 8x and add 40 on each side. Subtract 8x and add 40 on each side, which gives us 0 on the right. On the left we have x to the third minus 5x squared minus 8x plus 40. Cannot take a GCF out, so I'm going to factor out an x squared from the first 2 parentheses, or the first 2 terms, excuse me. And then make sure you chop slash here and put the negative with the 8 in the parentheses. So x squared, x minus 5 plus. Now here I need what's left in the parentheses to match what was left in the first set of parentheses of that first binomial. So if I divided an 8 out of here, that's going to actually give me the opposite. It will give me a negative x and a positive 5. I want a positive x and a negative 5. So then divide by a negative 8. Then we're left with x and negative 5. Which then means since we have the exact same matching binomial as a factor in each of those 2 terms, I can factor out the x minus 5, and then I'm left with x squared minus 8 equals 0. So that means one of my answers is x equals 5 when I set this equal to 0. And now let's set the other factor, x squared minus 8 equal to 0, and solve for x. So I get x squared equals 8. That means x equals plus or minus the square root of 8, which is equal to plus or minus the square root of 4 times the square root of 2, which is equal to plus or minus 2 roots of 2. Remember simplifying those radicals? Yeah. Last but not least, we can factor out a 3 here, so we're left with x squared minus 4 equals 0. Now try to factor what's left in the parentheses further. I have 2 terms there. So I'm thinking difference of squares or difference of cubes. These are both square rootable. The square root of x squared is x. The square root of the square root of 4 is 2. So difference of squares looks like this. And then set each factor that has an x in it equal to 0. This one does not have an x, so I don't need to set it equal to 0. So x plus 2 equals 0. The solution is -2. And x minus 2 equals 0. The solution there is +2. Boom, shakalaka.